And so those are all human needs that become impacted because of what we're doing to try to keep ourselves from being hurt again. And so there's a direct line between what you fear or what a character fears and the human need that ends up being voided. And then that becomes a huge motivator because we're all driven to, if we are lacking safety, then we're going to do whatever we can to become safe. If we're lacking in our relationships and feeling loved and being able to love other people, we're going to take great steps to fill that gap and so that we can feel that connection with other people. And that then becomes the story goal for the character. So there's totally connected.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 471 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Becca Puglisi, the co-author of the FEAR Thesaurus, which is hot out now on the market for just about a week as this podcast releases. Now, Becca and I have a great chat about the FEAR Thesaurus and about fear in storytelling, the psychology of fear, how it plays into character arc and plot, and ways authors can leverage it to maximize the tension and ground the characters in a relatable way, and so much more. It's a fantastic conversation with somebody I've been a huge fan of for a long time. Becca and Angela are the co-authors of I like to call it the Emotion Thesaurus series. I always get that wrong, but it did start with the Emotion Thesaurus, and the two of them have put together an amazing suite of books. The FEAR Thesaurus is the 11th. We talk about that book. We talk about how they got together. And again, we talk about so much more. And I'm so looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. And that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor.
Hey writer, are you spending countless hours searching for answers to your writing questions but getting nowhere? It's time you stopped endlessly searching and tuned into the Show Don't Tell Writing Podcast with me, Susie Vidori, where I'll be your personal writing coach. It's a weekly podcast show where I bring you writing techniques, best practices, motivation, inspirational stories from real live authors out there making it in the world, and you'll also get tons of actionable advice that can help you turn that book you're writing into the bestseller you know deep down that it can be. Just search for Show Don't Tell Writing with Susie Vidori where you listen to your favorite podcasts like this one, and I will see you over there.
And now, bit of a catch-up on comments from recent episodes. I'm going to dig back to episode 444, so over on YouTube for that episode, which was Book Marketing Made Easy with Manuscript Report. B.R. Dexter said, I just got my manuscript report and book Bible, etc. I went for the whole package, and I have been massively impressed. Well, thank you so much, BR, for that. I'm a huge fan. As I said, I use it to help me with, marketing ideas and comp titles, etc. for my books. And just a reminder for anyone who's interested in checking out manuscriptreport.com, you can use my affiliate code MARK10, that's MARK10, to get that 10% on whatever you get from them as well. So the next comment, again, over on YouTube for episode 467, Strategies for ADHD Writers with Nicole Ross. Shaheen said, really enjoyed this episode. The strategies Nicole shares for ADHD writers are practical and encouraging, and I love how you explore both the challenges and actionable approaches. It makes the topic really accessible for anyone trying to stay productive while managing ADHD. Thank you, Shaheen. And yeah, Nicole is fantastic. I'm so glad you got so much out of that episode, and I know that others have, because that's been a popular downloaded episode according to my stats. So thanks for the comment on that. again on YouTube. And hey, YouTube seems to be the place where most people love to leave their comments, and that's cool. I love it. Makes it nice and easy for me to find with the YouTube dashboard. So on YouTube for episode 469, Small Town Canadian Superheroes with Matthew Del Papa and Andy Taylor, Dan Redwater / J.K. Swift said, "Awesome. I love hearing about this kind of thing. Just ordered my copy. I grew up in small town BC, and that's British Columbia for anyone who's not as familiar with Canada, and was sure I was going to be a superhero when I grew up. I remember giving some serious thought about which buildings in town were tall enough for me to sit on and spot crimes, laugh emoji." So, Dan, you and me both, my friend. I grew up in a small town in mid-northern Ontario, and being a Spider-Man fan, I was like, where would I swing as Spider-Man? The tallest building was 4 stories, and there was like nothing else tall around it. The next ones were just regular buildings, 2-story, houses and stuff like that. So yeah, that would have been a big challenge. And again, this is just a creative aside, but that's a question like that is what led me to write the Canadian Werewolf series. I was like, what would it be like to be a man who lives in New York City and turns into a wolf every full moon? Like, what's the practicality of that? And I was like, what's the practicality of something like Spider-Man in a town with no buildings, or like you said, lurking on buildings to look for crime and stuff like that. Anyways, thank you for that comment. And for episode 471, Build Your Author Brand with Isabel Knight, Edwin Downward said at starkreflections.ca, "This episode feels very timely for me. In my desire to improve my book sales, I've once again been asking the who is my ideal reader question. Along comes your guest to discuss the other side of that process. Who am I that my ideal reader will stop long enough to see that I have written stories for them to enjoy?" Thank you, Edwin. I love that reflection. I love the way you've looked at that. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's left comments. I tried to get to as many of them as I could. I do love hearing what you're thinking about and reflecting on as you listen to the podcast, because that reminds me that this is all part of a reflective community, and your thoughts are cool because I learn from them too. So thank you guys so much. You're helping me in so many different ways. I'm going to play a bumper now, and I'm going to do a bit of a personal update. Okay, let's try and keep my personal update as, who am I kidding? It's not going to be that short. But I just got back from 11 days on the road. I was in Los Angeles at Writers of the Future. Probably going to do a focused conversation about that and why I love it so much. But then I returned to Toronto, went straight from the airport to the hotel for Toronto Indie Author Conference. And oh my God, 3rd year of this conference. And this is something created by Tao Wong. He wanted to have a conference for indie authors in Canada because there wasn't one. All the conferences in Canada for writers tend to be focused on traditional publishing and finding an agent and an editor, and not the business of being your own publisher and all the business aspects that work. And so some of the feedback I got from attendees who hadn't been there before, and several awesome folks that I know from different communities who came in to this and had never been to an indie author conference. And the cool thing was, I remember at the end of it, or even at the end of the first day, it was just a 2-day conference, Saturday, Sunday, is hearing from them saying, wow, I had no idea how A, friendly and welcoming this community is, and B, just how the business acumen that a lot of these folks have. And so it was just so amazing, such a great gathering, so many people. It was great to see Mal Cooper again. I saw Mal in New Brunswick last year, and that was great because Mal was living in New Brunswick, and now Mal's now in Saskatchewan, and came in for this conference. So great to see Mal, just about a year later. I had seen Eve Silver, but it's been a while since I'd seen Eve Silver, Zoe York as well. Again, these Canadian authors that were there, and I had not met Takiri Hirath in person. It was so cool because I'd known Takiri for years. I love her books. I've read several of her FBI thrillers, and know she's Canadian, but she's on the West Coast, and I've never had a chance to connect with her. So it was great to not only get to see her. I didn't really get a chance to chat with her much, which happens on a weekend like that. But a presentation she did, which was very much like a keynote at the beginning of the conference, was absolutely phenomenal. Just so inspiring. So saw people like Kat Gordon from the Ottawa area. Who hadn't I seen in a while? I hadn't seen Gina I hadn't seen in a while. And, Just Beyond the Pages, who has been on this podcast, a social media influencer who I met at TIAC. And then some authors, again, people I've had on the podcast, JJ McFall and A.L. Waddell. It was great to see them again as well. And there were authors as well from the Hamilton area as well that I'd had on the podcast, but had only ever interviewed online. Authors like Jarrett Mazza, who I've had on the podcast as well, thriller writer, or known as the mercenary writer as well. And I just realized, I think when I saw Jarrett, I was like, I don't think we'd met in person. So we saw him at the conference. Peter and Jan and Dan and Eric and again, Angelique Fons, who I tend to only see at conferences, and even just brainstorming in the middle of a session when someone shares something really cool. Angelique looks at me, says a few words, and I'm like, okay, that's going to be some cool collaborative thing we're going to work on together. And let me see. Kobo, getting to hang out with, Rachel and Tara from Kobo, awesome people, love them to death. I even had a chance to get caught up and actually have a leisurely sort of lunch with Tara, which was great. We got a chance to catch up there. The social on the Saturday night was at this pub that was kind of like, in the Weird Al song, another one rides the bus, and another gets on, and another gets on. Haven't seen so many people like this since I went to see The Who as he sings in it.
Riding in a bus down the boulevard, and the place was pretty packed. I couldn't find a seat, so I had to stand with the perverts in the back. It was smelling like a locker room. There was junk all over the floor. We're already packed in like sardines. We're stopping to pick up more. Look out! Another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus. And another comes on, and another comes on. Another one rides the bus. Hey, he's gonna sit by you. Another one rides the bus.
It was just jam-packed, and I know a few people who ended up leaving because they were not, it was uncomfortable because it was too crowded and stuff like that. But it was just, the food was great, and the company was great, and I had a chance to chat to a few more people I hadn't had a chance to talk with, have some drinks, connected with Sylvie Soul, who has commented on this episode, and it was so fun. We got to talk about the writing, and especially the writing. I was really admired how she had a deadline, so she was just there for the first day, but had a really tight deadline in this contest she had entered and gotten to that next level of. And it was like, oh yeah, so it's still like staying up till midnight or whatever, hanging out and socializing with a whole bunch of other writers, but then I'm going to write this project, at the last minute tomorrow, because there's nothing like that tension to get that story going, and that's something I resonated with really, really well. And just having some good laughs. And I chatted with so many amazing people, and names are escaping me right now, but there's nothing like those friendly faces, the smiles. I got a chance even to sit with Frank for a while as well. I saw Frank early on when I came in. And again, so the names are coming back to me of the cool people that I had a chance to hang out with and chat with. And again, I missed probably another dozen people I had some great conversations with. Oh yeah, Maya, we actually had a chance to chat, and I wanted to remind Maya, no, my God, your books are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. So all these little conversations with some amazing people. And I really do value having the ability to do that right in our own backyard and to talk about Canadian things. I think Kat Gordon had mentioned to me at one point, said, make sure you mention to writers about public lending rights, because that's something you don't mention when you're at a U.S. conference. And again, it was a really solid reminder of some of the differences and some of the wonderful things that often get overlooked when we don't take that more Canadian focus. At the conference, Tao and I did a really fun, a lot of people told us it was fun. We actually set up an author display showing how to sell books in person. And we walked through strategies and techniques, including some of the tools and resources you might need and some of the bare minimums and what to consider when you're setting that up. And that was a lot of fun, although it was a lot of carrying stuff because I neglected to pack my dolly into the car, and so I was carrying these boxes of books 3 blocks in Toronto Street. It took about 8 or 9 trips, so it was great for my step count, great for working off the calories of the bar snacks on the Saturday night, as well as the many, many, many drinks that folks bought me, and it was just a fantastic time. But anyways, Toronto Indie AuthorCon, if you are a Canadian author, I really sincerely highly recommend that you check it out. Come check it out in April next year. I've already double checked. I know it's it's going to be a couple weeks away from Writers of the Future, so I won't have to cram 2 things in really, really quickly. I get to go home and and have a different bag and be able to wash some clothes and repack and stuff. So I have a bit of a breather between those 2 conferences. But again, it's a reminder to me of the value of the community and how important that community is, because there are so many things we can have. There's so many things we can do with online and digital and stuff like that. But there's nothing like that hallway conversation, that quick conversation to touch base with somebody in person. And you're looking them in the eyes, and that they get it. They really understand what it is that you do as a creative. So again, if there are ways you can get connected in any way, in person with a local writers group, a meeting at a local library, anything, you don't have to travel too far. If you can, that can make a huge difference. Even when Stephen Kotowicz, award-winning science fiction author who lives in the area here, had reached out to me and said, "Hey, it's been a while. We both work from home, so we sometimes, let's just meet for lunch." And we made plans to do that soon. And just being able to have that one-on-one directly is so phenomenal. And I am so thankful and so privileged that I get to do this, that I get to hang out with some of the most amazing people in the world, creative people, editors, writers, all the people involved in this industry. I actually have to pinch myself. Ow! Ooh, I just pinched myself again. I have to pinch myself so often with just how fortunate I am and how lucky I am that I get to do this for a living. And speaking of luck, I'm going to roll a bumper and talk about how lucky I am that I got Becca Puglisi on my podcast to talk about the latest book that she has co-authored. So, as mentioned, I have Becca Puglisi, who is coming on this podcast. Becca, along with Angelea Ackerman, are the co-authors of an amazing series of books. So, Becca is an international speaker, a writing coach, best-selling author of the Emotion Thesaurus, and so many other resources for writers. Her books have sold over 1.4 million copies and are available in multiple languages, are sourced by U.S. universities, and are used by novelists, screenwriters, editors, and psychologists around the world. And here's the thing. So in the indie author community, to sell, 1 million ebooks is pretty phenomenal. But the thing is yes, they do sell ebooks, but the Emotion Thesaurus and the following books in the series, including the one that we're going to be talking about today, is the FEAR Thesaurus, is mostly sold. And again, I didn't ask her the stats, but I'm guessing 60 to 70% of those sales were going to be print, if not higher. And I'll see if I can get the details from her to share that. But enough about that. Becca is passionate about learning and sharing her knowledge with others. She does it through these online tools, the resources, the books, the talks she gives. And I know you're going to love this conversation that I had with her about this latest book in the best-selling series to help writers craft better stories, and that's coming up right now. Hey, Becca, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. This is the first time that I'm able to talk to anybody about fear and our new book.
Oh my
So
God,
I'm
really?
super
This is
excited.
an honor, an honor. This is so exciting. All right, so this is this is the Fear Thesaurus that is coming out. Or did I get the title properly?
That's it. The Fear
Yeah,
Thesaurus.
the Fear Thesaurus, and it's coming out very shortly. Probably by the time this episode is live, it will be out on your Shopify store, but then it's going to be broadly available in all the stores and library markets in May of 2026.
That's right. We're doing something new this year.
But I know I love this. I'm going to want to talk about that strategy as well. But before we get there, this is what number in the I guess I call it the Emotion Thesaurus series. Is that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
proper name for the series?
It's called the Descriptive Thesaurus series. So it's 11.
Okay.
This will be number 11
This
in
will
the
be
series.
number 11. So I
Yeah.
have to ask, with the 11th release in this very popular, very well-renowned, celebrated, lauded, series of books for writers. What were the fears that you had in putting this one together?
Oh, it's hard. It's depending on the topic that we do, the more it's it's based in real psychology, that's when we get a little bit freaked out because, as authors, we, make stuff up all the time. But
Yeah.
when you're talking about, this is how real people are, and so our characters should be, there's definitely pressure to get that right. So
Yeah.
we really wanted to look carefully at this. We've written quite a bit about what makes characters tick that's based in real psychology. So we did the wound thesaurus where we talk about wounds and everything that, comes out of that. And then the character trait books, where do traits come from? What do they look like? And this was kind of a gap, we felt like, in that whole kind of conversation about character arc. We hadn't written much about fears. There's not a lot out there about character fears. So we just decided that this was a hole that we wanted to fill. And yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking trying to make sure that we got all the details correct.
It's funny you talk about psychology because I think there's a chapter early on in the book where you get into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you do a comparison with needs, the connection
Yeah.
between fear and human needs. That was part of I guess the psychology research that went into this book.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got, something bad happens to you in the past and, it freaks you out and you don't want it to happen again. That actually becomes your fear that whatever you experienced that traumatized you is going to recur. And so you start trying to figure out, well, how did this happen? I don't want it to happen again. And you end up blaming yourself, blaming other people. We want to be able to say it happened because of this, because then I can keep it from happening again. And so we start believing these things that aren't necessarily true. We call it a false belief or a lie that
Right.
we believe, and the fear is wrapped up in there. And because you're afraid of this happening again, you adopt certain behaviors that are going to keep you protected. So if you believe that you were gullible and that's why you got hurt, then you're not going to do that again. You're going to overcorrect, get rid of gullibility, and you're going to become, really aware and observant and cautious. And these things are going to keep you from being hurt again, but they create other problems with your relationships, with your self-esteem, or with the way other people view you. Sometimes those shielding behaviors actually put us in unsafe situations. And so those are all human needs that become impacted because of what we're doing to try to keep ourselves from being hurt again. And so there's a direct line between what you fear or what a character fears and the human need that ends up being voided. And then that becomes a huge motivator because we're all driven to, if we are lacking safety, then we're going to do whatever we can to become safe. If we're lacking in our relationships and feeling loved and being able to love other people, we're going to take great steps to fill that gap and so that we can feel that connection with other people. And that then becomes the story goal for the character. So there's totally connected.
And it's so interesting as you're talking about these various fears. Now, when you first shared with me that this was your next book in the series, I got all excited as a guy I'm a big chicken and I write ghost stories and I'm all about the fear,
Nice.
I'm all about the horror, I'm all about the terror. It's not necessarily that. Like this is in everyday characters in everyday life, fear plays such a fundamental role in how we affect things. And I know in the book you dig into, I think there's charts as well that have like healthy response and unhealthy response. So the fear of, I think, change was one of the ones I remember. The fear
Yeah.
of change, there's the healthy response, and you list a bunch of them, and then the unhealthy responses. So you can actually have numerous characters in a scene potentially where, one of the characters maybe has an unhealthy response, and that's why they respond in a certain way, while everyone else is like, what's going on? I don't understand.
Right. And that's what's funny about fears is that so a lot of them like on on a certain level they're totally fine and they're really kind of normal and
Yeah.
unremarkable. But then they cross over into, these big overblown reactions and like, reordering your whole life in order to keep that thing away. And that's when it becomes, really an unhealthy thing that starts impacting other areas.
Wow. So I guess I'm curious were there any differences in the way that you approach this to the way that you've approached other books in the series?
Not really.
Mm.
I found it really similar to the Wound Thesaurus because that
Yeah.
one was, very much steeped in how people actually work and tick. And this is, it follows that kind of pattern. So we really kind of did the same thing. We looked at what about fear, how does it play into story, whether that's character arc or plotting
Right.
or even just writing a character's fear, knowing how to write that
Mm.
emotion well. And then we, fashioned the front matter around that to give some instructive information to writers on how to do that and what, mistakes to avoid and what are
Yeah.
the common mistakes that are made. And so it was really it's pretty similar to the other books actually in the process that we wrote it.
Oh, interesting. So I guess I'm curious about. I think, and this is my fault for jumping right into the fear and wanting to get right into the heart of this, but for any listeners who are not familiar with this series that you have, and you co-authored every one of them with
Yes,
Angela, right?
absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Now I know, so this series, the Description Thesaurus series is, you've sold over 1.4 million copies worldwide. And it did
Yeah.
start off, which is why I think of it as the Emotion Thesaurus series, the Emotion Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character expression. And that one's already in a second edition. So can you explain what these books are and why readers obviously are flocking to grab grab them and use them as resources?
Yeah, the Emotion Thesaurus was the first one, and it really kind of took off. I think it struck a nerve with a lot of writers because it addressed an area that every writer struggles with at some point and has to kind of like figure out. And there wasn't a lot of, information about that at the time, which is really show, don't tell. That's all about how do I show my character's emotion without resorting to cliches or the same, body cues over and over to show fear or anger or sadness. That was really the focus of the Emotion Thesaurus. And that one, was very well received because, like I said, it's kind of a universal problem that Angela and I discovered in our own writing. And we were trying to find a solution. And that was, kind of what we came up with. And when that one was done, we thought, well, what other areas of storytelling do people struggle with? What do we struggle with? And the next one was characters, building believable characters who are well-rounded and realistic. And so we started looking at character traits, positive and negative. Where do they come from? What do they look like? How do we write them in a way that's really going to appeal to readers and pull them in? So there's an element of show, don't tell in all of our books. It's really how to understand your character's traits or their wounds or conflict scenarios in your story and how to get all of that out there in a way that is really going to resonate with readers and draw them close and immerse them in the story. And so show don't tell is a common thread really that runs through all of our books.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the way in these books you break it down in such of a what are the ways that this looks like? How do characters respond in a situation, or how what are ways that and I love the fact that you just list a whole bunch of ideas, which
Yeah.
is almost like having a brainstorming partner right there Because often, we don't
Awesome.
have to wait till my partner gets home from work before we can talk about these things over dinner. I'm by myself. So it's like I can crack it open and go, ooh, brainstorming partner. I kind of think of these books as that, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's actually how we created them to work. We really wanted to have as much information as we could give to kind of kickstart ideas for people. And so they look at, the lists of, call it in the Emotion Thesaurus, what it looks like, what behaviors a character might exhibit if they're feeling that emotion. And it's not meant to be, copy paste, stick it in your story, because obviously every character is slightly different. They're very unique. They're going to respond in ways that are unique to them. And so our hope is that the information in the entry portion of our books gives people ideas, and then they can apply it to their character and they can modify it to exactly fit their character, their scene, and their story. That's really the purpose, how it's supposed to work.
Cool. I love that. And then I guess when I look at I guess the previous volume in the series was the emotion amplifier,
Yeah.
and that talked about character stress and volatility. And I guess so when somebody's asking, well, what's the difference between, stress and volatility and fear? I mean, aren't they the same thing? Asks the the average writer on the street.
I know, and that one is funny because we kind of, I mean, we coined that term, the emotion amplifiers, and it was because we had all of these emotions when we were writing the Emotion Thesaurus, and we were making our list of what we wanted to include,
Right.
and we kept like tripping over certain things that we thought like you could feel, but it wasn't actually an emotion, like hunger or
Right, right,
attraction. And so we realized, well, these aren't totally emotions, so we're not going to put them in the Emotion Thesaurus, and we kind of set them aside. And we
right,
realized what those things really are they're kind of like states of being that you're in like for a little while rather than an emotion. And we thought these are things that are gold for creating scenarios where your character's going to be overstimulated, they're going to be making mistakes, they're not going to be thinking rationally, it's going to Kate, the storyline, all of these things, are good throughout your story. So we created emotion amplifiers, and it's just a whole bunch of those kinds of things. It's hunger, it's inebriation, it's cold, just all these different states that you can put a character in that are going to make their situation worse and kind of give you the opportunity to get your story and your character where you want them to go.
Awesome. Thank you. I have to wonder then, as you're working on a book, you come up with things as you guys are working on it, and then you probably go, "Oh no, we're putting this aside. That's going in this." Like this doesn't fit in the one we're working on, but I know where
Yeah.
it's going to fit. Do you? I imagine you have a bunch of files with loose pieces of things like this in it
We
already.
do have a lot of loose ends that, and a lot of those end up becoming fodder for a new book. We realize, well, there's quite a bit here, and this is very, very common. So maybe this is
Right.
something that we should write about. So,
Awesome. So I want to dig back into fear because I mean it's universal, right? Like
yeah.
that's something. It's one of the things that we all have, but of different things and how it impacts us. In terms of the beginning, you've got these beautiful essays that really dig into the psychology of it. They dig into, even I think of the Douglas Winter quote that horror, not fear, but horror is an emotion, not a genre. And a very
Mm,
similar thing about fear. Fear is not all about a genre. Fear is about
right.
real humanity in general. Like we
Yeah,
don't really walk around in everyday life without fears having an impact on our decisions.
for sure. Yeah, it's really like you hit on it. You said that it's kind of a universal thing, and it is. I mean, we all have fears, and so when we can, the characters have to have fear at some level, and we do in the book we talk a lot about the character's greatest fear because that's what kind of drives the story and
Right,
defines things. But then there's also just how do you write everyday fear that your character's feeling on different intensities.
right,
We need to be able to do that well, but when we can when we can show a character when they're afraid, when they're anxious, when they're terrified, all of those different levels, people relate to that because we've all been there. And fear is a sign of danger, right? This is our
right.
body's way of telling us that there's a problem and that then the brain goes into overdrive and starts figuring out, how to respond, what to do about it. When readers see that fear, they recognize the potential danger, and then they feel for the character. They want them to be okay. They start worrying about them. Are they going to succeed? Are they going to get out of it? So fear is a really great way to mobilize the reader's emotions and the reader's connection to the character in the story. It's just a matter of getting it the right focus on it so that it doesn't like take over,
Right.
and make sure that you're focusing on the right fear and writing it in a way that is going to read true and pull readers in.
Awesome. And I'm looking at the breakdown of the book. Can you share the way you've broken out the kinds of fears? So, I mean, for example, you start off with survival fears, but then you have all these different subgroups, or what I'm not even sure what to call them. What do you call those different kinds of fears? And then you dig into it. So, like for example, I'll share this. So in survival fears, you've got sections on being hunted or pursuit. I mean that goes to thriller and horror and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then you have being physically attacked. Any genre, of course. Um, Death, obviously, another universal fear, and then physical pain. Those are the ones under survival fears, but then you get into stability and control, relationship. What other kinds of groupings do you have in this book?
Yeah, we have stability and control. That's all about, characters who need to be in control. They need to be in charge. They need to be able to dictate everything.
Okay.
So, and then we have relationship fears. That's everything socially, are the fears that we have about losing a loved one or being rejected or being abandoned. So obviously those are huge because those are the ones, when anything that involves other people is going to be
Yeah.
very personal. So those are really important. We have identity fears where, people are afraid of something about themselves being revealed. They're afraid of finding out something about themselves that they don't want to know or recognize. Moral and existential fears.
Ooh.
Those are good ones. Yep.
Yeah.
They're, it's fears of having no purpose, fear of
Right.
missing out, a fear of,
FOMO.
right, fear of divine retribution, a
Whoa.
fear of being unable to achieve a dream. I mean, there's like just,
Yeah.
there's so many things that, we as
Yeah.
people worry about and get
Yeah.
all,
Being a
bent
burden
out
to
of shape.
others, being taken advantage of,
Yeah.
betrayal. I mean, again, losing one's sanity or financial security, right? Two different,
Yeah. Yeah.
different fears. I mean, wow. I mean, so much to fear, so much to fear,
Right.
so
So
much to
many
write about.
things.
But when I'm talking to you about this, I'm thinking, oh my God, so much conflict, so many things that can drive emotion and drive characters and drive interactions between characters as
Yeah.
well. Oh my
So,
goodness. So let's dig into some of the logistics. So you said you're doing something a little bit different with this one. April 15th, 2026, you are launching it on your Shopify store.
yes, we just
Prior.
opened a Shopify store last year. And so that was a big project for us. And then when we were talking about publishing this book, we normally just, we have a launch date and we release it everywhere. And we decided, let's start by kind of celebrating the store that we've created and
Yeah.
giving really the people who know about it, the people who are fans, kind of an advance notice, where they can order it early. So it'll be available in April, and then a month later we'll release it wide everywhere else, like we always do.
Is
So we're gonna
there
see how it goes.
anything special that fans can get, like a signed copy if they order it from the Shopify store? Or is that you're
Um,
just drop shipping right from a warehouse?
Not a signed copy, but we are going to have a fear hub at our site that you get
Ooh.
access to when
Okay.
you order the book. And actually, I believe that's for everybody, but people who order it early get access to it early. We're going to be doing a webinar on fear, and we also have some freebies too, some handouts and some things to help you figure out, workshop your character's fear and all of that. So there's going to be in the book, there's a QR code that you can access and it takes you to that hub. And there's going to be lots of cool tools there to help you as you're figuring that out.
So the it releases on the 15th. That's when it starts shipping, I guess. But people can right now, like I'm talking to you at the end of March. Right now, people can go there and place a pre-order for it, right?
Not
Or
yet. It
oh, it was
opens
April 15th.
in
Okay.
April. Yeah,
Well,
on
see,
April
I'm
15th.
already itchy. I
That's
mean, even though
right.
I've seen a digital version of the book, this is the kind of book I want to own a physical copy of. Like
Yeah,
that's the kind of book because it's going to be one where I'm going to be flipping through all the time.
I
Like,
agree. Lots of marking,
so it's April
highlighting.
15th that people can start to place their orders. for
Yes.
the book. But so that, and this is under your brand, Writers Helping Writers, where this is not just you've had this site for a long time,
Yeah.
almost from the very beginning of this series, and it's not just a place for people to buy books, but you have a plethora of resources for writers there.
We really do. We started in 2008, started our blog, and it was a different name there as a blogger, and then we had to move over to WordPress. But yeah, we've got 20 plus years of blogging there on, so many different topics. So I mean, if I always encourage people if they have questions to just come and do a search, and you can find a lot of information about whatever you're looking for with writing, with different genres, with different storytelling techniques. But we also have a free resource page where we include every time we release a book, we normally take some of the appendices and we create a free download so people can download them, whether it's a handout or a workshopping opportunity to figure things out for your character, or even sometimes just like flowcharts or things that make certain aspects of storytelling easier to understand. So we really do have a lot of things. We also have a section on we just redid our website and now we've changed some of the names and I can't remember the exact page, but there's a resource for writers page where we have editors, cover designers, formatters that we've worked with or that we know very well that we
Right,
feel
yeah.
comfortable recommending. Because a lot of, people who are self-publishing, they're looking and trying to figure out, who do I trust and where do I go? And so we've got that information too. So we do just try to, writers helping writers. We're trying to help as much as we can and share the knowledge that we have gained along the way. So lots of
Awesome.
stuff there.
Thank you. And there'll be links to that in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. So I have to ask, you're helping other writers, and you've been doing that for a long time.
It's
Um,
been a while. Good grief.
I have to ask because this happens to all of us who help other writers. How much has your own writing taken a backseat to the work you do in providing valuable content to help other writers?
Yeah, it's totally on the back burner. I mean, I've got two kids at home and with everything that's going on with this series and just how well it's been received and how much it is helping people. I mean, that's, taken definitely the bulk of our time. I would love to return to fiction at some point. Right now, I'm waiting for that, day to happen. Not
There's
sure
going to
when
be
that'll
there's a
be.
fear in there somewhere.
Yes,
Fear of
absolutely.
not being able to get back to your own writing. That's a special,
Right?
yeah, a special fear that happens to people who help writers. I
Yeah,
know I've fallen prey to it numerous times over the years because helping writers is such a satisfying.
absolutely.
I was going to say, what is it, calling?
Yeah, it is.
Vocation.
And I was a teacher before I had kids. And so the evolution of my writing career it's just leading one thing into the other. I mean, it's,
Right.
very cool to see me able to use the gifts that I've been given and the things that I love to do and combine them, into this career that's just so amazing.
Well, I have to applaud you and Angela for the amazing content that you've created, the free content you put out there, these amazing books that, people recognize instantly and clamor to. The way I remember, I was excited to see that you were doing these books as I was in the early days in the 80s when I was uh, getting the Writer's Digest magazine, kind of like the Scholastic thing that you could
Yeah,
see what
yeah.
books were out, and it was the How Done It series.
Oh,
It has that sort of feel for me, like, oh, this is one where you just have to have all of them.
oh,
Because I might
well,
not need this
thank
one right
you.
now, but I'm going to need it one day. I I don't know if I ever asked or heard the story of how you guys either met and or decided to collaborate on that first that ground breaking book that started this whole series.
It's a really cool story. I was writing, this was in 2004. I was writing young adult, just getting started, like knew nothing. Angela had just started writing. She was writing middle grade, and we met at Critique Circle. We both joined Critique Circle to find critique partners, and of the thousands and thousands of people there, we ended up finding each other's work, loving each other's writing, and became critique partners. And we did that for 4 years. And there were other partners as well. They kind of came and went, but Angela and I we just stuck and we really connected and spent a lot of time those first 4 years growing our craft. We took a year off to just study writing craft books. We read like 5 different books separately, and then we would come together and talk about them. And so we were just really invested in each other's growth. And then we started the blog in 2008 and started, one of the things that we had been doing as critique partners was we were both really frustrated with our own writing and how our characters were always doing the same things. My characters were always shuffling their feet. They were always shrugging their shoulders. Like,
Yeah.
why? Surely there are other ways to show these emotions. I talked to her about it. She's like, oh my gosh, different cues, but same problem. And so we started keeping lists of, okay, anger, here's what your character can do when they're angry, or here's what they can do when they're happy. So we would just have different ideas, and we shared it with our critique group, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I have this problem too. And so when we started the blog, we decided to blog every Saturday. We would do a new emotion. And we didn't really know what we were doing or if it was going to be something that people were interested in, and people really responded and started saying, oh my gosh, you have to put this in a book. You have to make a book. And so we were like, okay. So that's how it actually all got started, was just us being critique partners and seeing an area of need that we both had, trying to find a solution.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. As we get close to the end, can you let people know where they will be able to purchase the FEAR Thesaurus, as well as any of the books in that series as well?
Yeah, we have at our website, our blog is writershelpingwriters.net. On the bookstore page, all of the books are there, and you click on a book and it'll take you to a page that just gives you more information. You can see a sample table of contents, so you can see, what you're getting in the book. And then it'll take you to the Shopify store where you can buy it in print or in digital.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. And then I guess sort of final question, as this is a podcast for writers and it is Stark Reflections. As you
Oh,
reflect back on, those beginnings in 2004 when you first began this journey, what are some of the most valuable bits of advice as you reflect back on the years that you wish more beginning writers knew without having to stumble into them the way we all do?
yeah. The biggest thing is just that you have to be okay with it taking a long time. I mean, this is writing a book and writing story, putting story together and learning how to, not just the technical part, but all the things about pulling readers in and making them invested and getting them involved. I mean, it takes a long time. And I think especially today, it's very easy to hit that publish button. But if we can just be patient and grow our craft and really dedicate ourselves to learning and growing, and obviously tied to that is never stop learning, that there's always more things to learn and things that you can become better at, or kind of expand your skill set. Just be patient and wait until you reach that magical, very hard to define time when you're ready and your stories are ready. And that's where I also would say the second part of that is critique partners. I mean, I think that that's where, you're able to hear advice and feedback that you can't see for yourself, and things that are wrong with your writing or that you just don't know yet because you just can't see it. And being able to help other people with their writing. I mean, there's just some kind of like magical alchemy that happens when we get with other writers and look at each other's writing and share what we know with other people. And I think it exponentially decreases the learning curve when you start getting with other writers. So maybe those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
Awesome. Well, Becca, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I was actually, I have to admit, as we finish this off, is I was actually afraid I wasn't going to be able to ask intelligent enough questions, and I hope that was an unfounded fear that I had
Yes.
because again, I respect you and Angela so much. I love the works you're doing, and I'm kind of looking way up there at you guys, going, okay, these are the masters here. Can
Wow.
I even interview you in a way that is worthy of your time? So I hope I
No,
passed.
you're so good at what you do, and again, the partnering, helping writers, what you're doing is helping a lot of people to learn and to find the resources that they didn't know they were looking for. But also, you're helping us get the word out about the books that we're writing. So You're awesome on a number of levels. So thank you for having me.
And so are you. Thanks, Becca.
Thank you.
Okay, only about 30 or 40 reflections for me to share here. No, seriously, it's only about a half dozen. So the first one is just a quick reminder of how Becca mentions the way that that Becca and Angela hope that writers use this book and other books in this series. And it's not to simply copy and paste the details and the situations, but to leverage them, to use the books as a resource, as a way to inspire something that they can take that's going to be unique to an author's own specific characters and setting and personalities and situations. So it's meant to be a launching board, a jumping board that a writer can then adapt for making their writing better. Just like, my Stark Reflections and the podcast and the stuff we learn from great guests like Becca is, what can we learn from this person, from their experience, and how can we adapt it into our own? And that's really what makes it fly. Now, I was going to look for an element from this book, which I did order online. I did wait until I'm recording this on Thursday, April 23rd, which is World Book Day, and I wanted to make sure I purchased a book today, although I purchased a book. Shh, don't tell my partner. Often purchase about 1 or 2 books a week. Shh. So anyways, I did place the order directly from their website. I do have a digital copy of the book, but I want a physical copy of the book. But what I'll do, and I'm going to do this probably for my patrons because I think it'll be an exciting thing, is I'm going to take an element from the Fear book. I'm going to look at it in relation to one of my characters and a book that I'm working on right now, book 9 in my Canadian Werewolf series. And I'm going to apply something from the book and say, okay, here's what I found in the book, and here's what it made me think of, and here's how I'm going to adapt this into a situation in a book. So I want to use a real life example, which I think would be useful for you for that. So another reflection is how fear is a universal thing, and it's not something exclusive to the genres of horror and suspense and thriller. And that leads back to, it reminded me actually of an anthology I edited for WMG Publishing in the Fiction River series called Feel the Fear. And that was an anthology in which, I'm often thought of as the horror guy, but I did a Feel the Love and a Feel the Fear back to back for that series. And again, love didn't mean romance and fear didn't mean horror. So my Feel the Fear, I just wanted fear to be a prevalent element of the story, of the characters, of something that happened. And so it contains stories from numerous genres, including romance. And I wanted stories from all different genres where fear was an important factor. And it'd be interesting. What I'll probably do, for my patrons, I'll go into that anthology. I'll take a look at the anthology and the stories, because bringing them to mind immediately isn't going to happen because my brain is all over the place. But taking a look at the stories and say, oh, this is the element of fear, and this is how the character or the writer used this. I think that'd be very, very interesting. Okay, just a couple more reflections. So, final reflection? Nah, this won't be the final one, but it's close to the final reflection. But when Becca talked about this, she said the way the fear is a great way to mobilize the reader's connection to the story. And I love that because that's ultimately what we want in our stories. We want to be able to enhance the way that a reader can connect to our writing, connect to our stories, connect to our characters. And given the pervasiveness of fears, this is a really great way to entice that reader in to that connection. Really cool. Love that. Just love that. Again, not big fan of fear. I'm afraid of everything. I'm a big fan of everything. So anyways, and then just a couple of additional reflections and things that I want to point out. The first one is the amazing resources available at writershelpingwriters.net. Go check it out. There's so many free resources available for you. You can thank me later. Amazing, amazing resources. You don't even need to purchase a thing. And I love that they've dedicated so much of their life to that. And then the other thing is considering Becca and Angela, how they've dedicated so much time to helping writers. And I mentioned this briefly, but I want to call it back, is how those books and that entire Writers Helping Writers ecosystem, how that significantly reduced the time Becca has to focus on her own fiction writing and other projects. Becca and Angela got together to help each other as writers, and then they created this amazing ecosystem to help millions of writers out there. Millions of writers have been helped by their books, or potentially maybe just close to 1 million, let's say, because probably a writer who caught onto one of their books has bought all of their books. So I don't know, but they have helped countless writers. And that meant that their own writing had to take a back seat. And it's important to remember something like that as you're thinking about what you want to do and what drives you and drives you your passion. And I struggle with that daily, because I know that if I let go of helping writers, I'm going to have significant amount more time to get more projects done. Because, the ideas never stop coming. It's the time to write the books. And I've gotten to the point in the last 5 years or so of producing more and being a lot quicker with that process. But I know that a lot of my time is spent helping writers, and I know I could get more writing done. And part of me, kicks myself for that. But then the other part of me, and this is the part of me that harkens back to connecting in person with so many beautiful writers and getting to spend time with them, and having some folks who've reached out and thanked me for the work that I do on this podcast, for the work that I do in the community and some of the panels and presentations and things that I do. And honestly, I love that. I cherish that so much. I do get an intrinsic reward from it, and I'm pretty sure that Becca and Angela get that intrinsic reward from hearing how powerful and how important the work that they do is. So, if you have benefited from Writers Helping Writers, from one of their thesaurus books, one of the tools that they've done, a talk they've done, a podcast interview, let them know. Leave a review for one of their books somewhere. Use their contact form. It never hurts for somebody to hear a nice thing, because the world can be such a dark place. So many things happen. There's so much hatred and so much finger pointing and ill will. Taking the time to just say something positive and share something positive about someone that you interacted with could really make your day. And I want to tell you this. I had at least a dozen, if not 24 or more people that I interacted with at Toronto Indie AuthorCon. They made my day. Little things like asking me to sign one of my books. That's a huge, huge thing that just makes me feel warm inside. And I think I signed four different books for people at Toronto Indie AuthorCon. That just felt amazing. Just felt so cool. And then I just had people comment on something that they heard me say on a panel or in a presentation and offer that feedback. Thank me for something I said on the podcast, or bringing in a really awesome guest that I got to share with them, because I got to learn from the guest, and so did that audience. So take the time to reach out to those people who've inspired and helped you, like people like Becca, people like Angela, because I'm pretty sure, like me, they get an intrinsic reward just from helping people, but it never hurts to throw a little sugar around, to throw a little sunshine, to spread some rainbows, and to spread some love. And that being said, I love you guys. I love this community. You guys are amazing. I love coming back to it time after time. And I love, in particular, those weeks when I'm not on the road, and I can, dig into comments and share comments and not shortchange some of those reflections, because I know many of my readers enjoy the reflections, that they are a fundamental part of what this podcast is. It isn't just me getting to talk to really awesome, cool, smart, inspiring people. It's talking to those people and then sharing my personal reflections, because that's the differentiator in many cases. I am not Joanna Penn. I'm not Sacha Black. I'm not Jeff Elkins. I'm not all of these amazing powerhouses in the industry who I love and adore and respect so much. I'm me, and I'm giving a piece of myself, and that's what makes this unique. And that is the final lesson I want to share with you in the reflection, and that's what we do with our writing, especially in a world of digital pulp and in a world of noise and so many books being published. The things that you can do to insert elements that are unique to you as a writer, as a person, and that can be those elements that can connect with the right people and create something really, truly powerful. And you can do this by creating something powerful and not giving up on you and not giving up on your writing. And I'm not giving up on that either, because I'm going to be back next week, as always, on Friday, with another interview, another reflection, another episode. So, until next week and until next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, thanking you so much for listening to this podcast. Please feel free to share this episode or any episode with someone that you think would find value in it. That's a great way to give to the writing community in general and to support this podcast. But until next week and until next episode, here is wishing you, dear listener, great writing and good Stark reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomtech.com.